time to time. It could be as low as 5,000 or maybe upwards of 6,000 men. So that would be between 60,000 to 72,000 soldiers. And Jesus said he would have at his disposal more than 12 legions. The Amplified Bible translates that as more than 80,000 angels. That's a huge army. And I want you to remember, these are angels, not just soldiers. And that brings us to the second part of our question, or the second question. How powerful would that 24, one angel killed 70,000 soldiers in a morning and an afternoon, people. 100 billion people at one time. I saw somebody go. That would have been a force of angels large enough to destroy all mankind alive at one time. And today, it would be enough for them to destroy today's population twice over. So I want you to think about that many angels watching as the death, the burial, and resurrection of Jesus played out. The angels listened as God's Son fell on his face in the Garden of Gethsemane. Their mighty muscles tense, expecting a rescue mission to be launched at any second. The angels heard, along with God the Father, as his Son was begging him to let the cup pass. They looked intently at the Father's face, wondering what father would turn down such a request from their Son. And then, to their horror, the angels looked down on the garden scene to see an angry crowd with armed soldiers moving toward the Son. Immediately they reached for their swords. There were more than enough of them for the task. One of them alone would have been more than enough to dispense with this small army. One of them, with all of his glorious eyes closed. Remember, angels had eyes all over their body. One of them with all they turned Son. They paused, ready, thinking that there's nothing to spare the Son, nothing to stop or even slow the angry mob. Nothing. They all, every last one, stood ready, zeroed in on the action taking place on the earth far below them, fully expecting the Father to step in at any moment and rescue his Son, yet still no signal, not even a whisper of a plan of action. But there had to be some plan, any plan. Surely the Father would not let this play out, not this way. Surely the Father would save the Son. Surely the spurned Creator would release his wrath finally on this ungrateful creation. Surely he wouldn't stand by and do nothing while his Son was subjected to such baseless ridicule. Still, nothing happened. Not a flinch, not the blink of an eye. Now the crowd was there, on top of the Father's Son, hateful, ugly, malicious. These angels couldn't stand to watch. Surely they should act. Surely they should do something. And at that moment on the earth, one of the ones with Jesus struck out with his sword. The fight was on. Blood was drawn. An ear was on the ground. Some of the angels' swords moved ever so slightly, fully expecting to be given the go-ahead right then, fully expecting to be able to join Peter in the fight, fully expecting to turn the tide with just one or two strokes of their swords. But down below, the battle was stopping as fast as it had started. Jesus, the Son, reached down, picked up the ear, replaced and healed it, and chastised his followers for resorting to sword's play. The eyes of the Father spoke the same to the angels, and they loosened their grip, and they watched the event begin to play out below them, not understanding at all. The angels watched as the little men who had been with Jesus fled away and abandoned their teacher. Surely now the Father would do something. Surely he would not leave his Son all alone. Surely he would send some of them to stand with the Son, to protect him, and others to fight, but no signal was given. They had to watch as Jesus was jerked away, manhandled, and disrespected. They had to watch as he was lied about, falsely accused, and disrespected even more. Still, no mention of a rescue plan, no mention of retaliation. The angels watched, hands on their sheathed swords. They watched as the Son of God was dragged from one kangaroo court to another. They watched with fingers twitching to fight as the Jewish king Herod played with Jesus, dressed him in a ridiculous robe, made fun of him. They watched, they waited, knowing that at just any second, God the Father would release them to bring his Son to safety. But the command never came. Never came. It didn't come when the crowd was screaming for the Son's blood. It didn't come when the soldiers mocked his Son and spat on him. It didn't come when Pilate told his soldiers to beat Jesus. The angels couldn't believe it when a Roman soldier slashed a whip laced with metal and glass across the Son's back. Surely the Father would not allow another lash to rake across his Son, but he did, 39 times in all, and no angel could believe it. And when the Father watched in silence as the Son was dragged out of the pool of his own blood back to the angry crowd, they were now thinking, since the Father has let it go this far, we're about to be released, and the Father's wrath will be merciless, will be engaged with these people in sure victory. And the angels were even more ready than before to do the Father's business and utterly destroy this ungrateful creation. They watched with bated breath, ready to strike out at a moment's notice. They watched ready to spring like a crouching animal stalking its victim. They watched cold like a viper ready to strike. They watched like the most powerful fighting army that they were. They watched as the Son struggled to carry his only cross. They watched as the soldiers stretched him out across it. They watched as one soldier picked up a hammer and some nails. They watched, fully expecting the signal to come at any moment, because surely the Father would not let a nail pierce his Son's hand. And each angel flinched when they saw it happen. Confused, they watched as the second nail was pounded in. What kind of plan was this? What kind of strategy could this be? Befuddled, they watched the final nail stake the Son's feet to the cross. Bewildered, they saw the cross fall into place. Perplexed, they heard the Son look down from the cross, then back up to heaven and say to the Father, "Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." It seemed that the Father and the Son had the same game plan. It was as though their minds were one. As though one knew what the other was doing. And the angels just watched, jaws drop as the Son gasped his last breath. So the entire heavenly host stood there, dumbfounded, speechless, as the Son died, and the Father did nothing. They stood feeling cold inside as a Roman spear pierced the Son's side and his body was dropped from the cross. They stood motionless, watching his body being carried to the tomb. They watched the dead body being wrapped in the scattering of spices. They watched the tears fall from the faces of his friends. They watched the heartbroken mother. They watched hell start a party in its streets, rejoicing over the Son's death. They watched, they wondered, they questioned, why weren't we allowed to stop it all? And all the while, God the Father was silent. From the throne, there was no explanation, no enlightenment, no justification. For 3 whole days, the entire heavenly host just stood doing nothing, bewildered, baffled, puzzled. But on the morning of the 3rd day, something happened. God the Father spoke, and when he did, every angel then understood, and a smile swept across the entire heavenly host. In that one moment, firm, exact, purposeful, the Father smiled. The Father smiled and said, "Now, my son, now, get up and rise. And rise from the dead." He did. This story is so unreal. The death of Jesus is so unbelievable that I, like those angels, have to wonder what ailed Jesus to the cross. It wasn't just nails that held Jesus to the cross. Only love could keep him there. The price for sin had to be paid for all our sins to be forgiven. Like me standing there with Gable, powerless, unable to do a thing while they were stitching up his face. I was powerless, unable to do anything. And like that, the entire heavenly host had to stand by, powerless, helpless, as Jesus was crucified on Calvary. God was stitching. God was stitching up a lost humanity. And there was not a single thing any angel or archangel could do about it. It was all God's work and Jesus' work. Like a song written a few years ago said, he could have called 10,000 angels, but thank God he didn't. We started to last week, but we're going to this week. A few days, a week or two ago, Joshua's boys, one of them's name is Joshua and one is Samuel. They asked me if they could do this song, and I'm excited that they wanted to. David enjoyed praising the Lord so much that he, unlike a king, he danced with the common people and praised the God. And his wife was highly critical of that. And in this very same verse that it said she criticized David for dancing with the commoners. The Bible tells us that she was never able to have any children. It doesn't say because she said that, but it sure stuck it right there together. She was critical of how David had praised God. And I just am very excited to have, I think we're going to call them the Hop Boys, HOP for House of Pain, come forward at this time. Joe, have you got that song ready? So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Hot Boys.